The year is sometime in the late 12th or early 13th century. No one knows exactly when, because the story was not written down until Europeans arrived centuries later. The place is the forested land of what is now upstate New York, among the Finger Lakes. The Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee as they call themselves, are not a single nation. They are 5 separate nations: the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, and the Seneca. They speak different dialects of the same language, but they do not speak to each other in peace. They fight, they raid, they kill, they take captives and torture them. Blood feuds stretch back for generations. A man's father was killed by a man from another nation, so he kills that man's son, and that man's son kills his son, and the cycle never ends. The people live in fear. They cannot hunt without watching for war parties. They cannot plant without wondering if their fields will be burned. They cannot sleep without dreaming of fire. Into this world of endless bloodshed, a man appears. His name is Deganawida, the Great Peacemaker. He is not Iroquois. He is Huron, from across Lake Ontario. He has a vision. He sees a great tree, the tree of peace, with its roots spreading in 4 directions. Beneath the tree, the warring nations lay down their weapons. Beneath the tree, no one fights. Beneath the tree, there is only peace. But Deganawida cannot do this alone. He needs a voice. He needs a leader who can speak to the people, who can persuade the chiefs, who can turn the vision into reality. He finds that voice in a man named Hiawatha, a man who has lost everything to war. Hiawatha is a chief of the Onondaga. He is a skilled orator, a respected leader, a good man. But he is also a man consumed by grief. His daughters have been killed in a raid. His wife has died of sorrow. He has left his village and wandered into the forest alone, mad with grief. The Great Peacemaker finds him there, sitting by a lake, weeping. He speaks to Hiawatha. He tells him about the tree of peace. He tells him that the killing can stop. He tells him that he can turn his grief into something that will save generations. Hiawatha listens. The tears dry on his face. He rises. He agrees to help. Together, the Peacemaker and the Hiawatha will travel to each of the 5 nations. They will face war chiefs, sorcerers, and cannibals. They will be threatened, mocked, and nearly killed. But they will not stop. And when they are done, they will have created the oldest living democracy in the world, the Iroquois Confederacy, the great law of peace, a union of nations that would later inspire Benjamin Franklin and the founders of the United States. This is the story of Hiawatha, the man who turned grief into peace, the founder of a confederacy, the voice of the great law. To understand Hiawatha, you must first understand the Great Peacemaker, Deganawida. He is a mysterious figure, part history, part legend. According to Iroquois tradition, he was born a Huron, but his mother was a virgin. A prophecy foretold his birth. As a baby, he spoke the words, "It is peace," before he could walk. He grew into a man of immense spiritual power. He could calm storms, heal the sick, and speak with animals. But he was also a practical man. He knew that peace would not come through miracles alone. It would come through persuasion, through law, through the consent of the people. He chose Hiawatha as his speaker because Hiawatha had what he lacked: eloquence, charisma, and the trust of the Iroquois people. Hiawatha was not a prophet. He was a politician. He was a man who knew how to sit in a council, how to read a room, how to turn an enemy into an ally. Together, they made a perfect team. The Peacemaker provided the vision. Hiawatha provided the voice. Their first challenge was the Mohawk, the easternmost nation. The Mohawk were fierce warriors. They had no interest in peace. They mocked the peacemaker. They ridiculed Hiawatha. They said, "You are weak. You are cowards. We will kill you." But Hiawatha did not fight back. He spoke. He spoke of the endless bloodshed. He spoke of the widows and orphans. He spoke of the children who would never know a day without fear. He spoke of a future where a man could walk from the Hudson River to Lake Erie without carrying a weapon. The Mohawk listened. They had never heard anyone speak like this. They had never considered that peace might be possible. They agreed to send representatives to a great council. The Oneida, the Cayuga, and the Seneca also agreed. Only one nation remained, the Onondaga, Hiawatha's own people. And the Onondaga were led by a man named Haudenosaunee, a sorcerer, a tyrant, a killer. Haudenosaunee was the most powerful chief in the Iroquois world. He was also the most feared. His body was twisted. His hair was tangled with snakes. His fingernails were claws. His eyes burned with evil magic. He had started many of the blood feuds that plagued the nations. He had personally murdered Hiawatha's daughters. He was the enemy of peace, and he would never agree to a confederacy that limited his power. The confrontation with Haudenosaunee is the centerpiece of the Hiawatha story. Hiawatha and the Peacemaker traveled to Onondaga territory. Haudenosaunee refused to see them. He sent warriors to kill them. The warriors somehow could not find them. The Peacemaker used his spiritual powers to hide them. Hiawatha used his oratory to turn the warriors into allies. Finally, they stood before Haudenosaunee. The sorcerer chief laughed. He said, "You come to make peace. I have made war for 40 years. I have killed your children. I will kill you too." Hiawatha did not raise his voice. He did not draw a weapon. He looked at Haudenosaunee with pity. He said, "Your hair is twisted with snakes. Your heart is twisted with hate. You have killed so many that you have forgotten why you started. But you are not beyond healing. No one is beyond healing. Let us comb the snakes from your hair. Let us wash the blood from your hands. Let us make you the first among equals, the fire-keeper of the great council. You will not lose power. You will gain something greater, the respect of all nations, not just your own." Haudenosaunee hesitated. He had never been offered such a thing. He had never been offered forgiveness. The Peacemaker stepped forward and began to comb the snakes from Haudenosaunee hair. One by one, the snakes fell away. Haudenosaunee body straightened. His eyes lost their fire. He wept. He agreed to the peace. The Onondaga joined the Confederacy. The 5 nations, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, were united. Later, a 6th nation, the Tuscarora, would join, but in Hiawatha's time, there were 5. The Great Council was established at Onondaga, the central fire. Each nation had its own council fire, but all matters of war and peace were decided by the Grand Council of 50 chiefs, the sachems. The sachems were not elected by popular vote. They were chosen by the clan mothers, the women of the nation. The clan mothers could also remove sachems if they failed in their duties. This was a form of democracy, a form of checks and balances, a form of representative government. It was unique in the world. It worked. The Iroquois Confederacy ended the blood feuds. It allowed the nations to hunt, to plant, to raise children without fear. It also made the Iroquois militarily powerful. They no longer fought each other, so they could fight their enemies with united strength. The Confederacy lasted for centuries. It is still alive today. The story of Hiawatha is not just a legend, it is a constitution. The great law of peace, the Gaya-Nashagoa, was memorized by Iroquois leaders and recited at councils. It was written down in the 19th century, but its principles are ancient. The great law establishes a federal system. Each nation manages its own internal affairs, but all nations send representatives to the Grand Council for matters that affect everyone. It establishes the rule of law. No one is above the law, not even the sachems. It establishes the principle of separation of powers. The civil chiefs, the sachems, are separate from the war chiefs. It establishes the rights of women. The clan mothers nominate and remove the sachems. It establishes the principle of consensus. Decisions are made not by majority vote, but by discussion, persuasion, and ultimately consensus. If consensus cannot be reached, the matter is postponed. It establishes the concept of federalism. The Confederacy is strong, but the nations are sovereign. These ideas were revolutionary in the 13th century. They were still revolutionary when Europeans arrived. In the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin and other American founders studied the Iroquois Confederacy. They borrowed its federal structure, its separation of powers, its representative government. The American Constitution owes a debt to Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, a debt that is not always acknowledged. The Iroquois themselves have always known. They call the Great Law the oldest living democracy. The story of Hiawatha is also a story of personal redemption. Hiawatha began as a man destroyed by grief. He had lost everything. He was wandering the forest, alone, mad, ready to die. The Peacemaker found him and gave him a purpose. Hiawatha transformed his grief into a force for good. He did not seek revenge against the men who killed his daughters. He forgave them. He included them in the peace. That is the hardest thing any human can do, to forgive the unforgivable, to include the excludable, to love the unlovable. Hiawatha did it. He did it because he understood that revenge only leads to more revenge. He did it because he understood that the only way to end the cycle of violence is to break it, not continue it. He did it because he understood that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, of reconciliation, of a future that is better than the past. Hiawatha's name has become famous in popular culture, thanks largely to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, The Song of Hiawatha. But Longfellow got almost everything wrong. His Hiawatha is a composite of several Native American legends, not the historical Iroquois leader. Longfellow's Hiawatha is a warrior, a magician, a lover. The real Hiawatha was none of those things. He was a statesman, an orator, a peacemaker. He did not fight battles. He ended them. He did not seek power. He shared it. He did not build monuments. He built a constitution. And that constitution, the great law of peace, is still recited by Iroquois leaders today. That is Hiawatha's real monument, not a statue, not a poem, but a living government. So what can we learn from Hiawatha? First, that peace is possible even after generations of war. The Iroquois had been fighting for so long that no one remembered why. But Hiawatha and the Peacemaker showed them a different path. They did not wave a magic wand. They worked for years, traveling from nation to nation, speaking to chiefs and warriors and clan mothers. Peace is not a miracle. It is hard work, but it is possible, second, that forgiveness is strength, not weakness. Hiawatha forgave the man who killed his daughters. He made that man the firekeeper of the Grand Council. That is not weakness. That is the strongest thing a human can do. Revenge is easy. Forgiveness is hard. Hiawatha chose the hard path, and it saved his people. Third, that good governance matters. The Iroquois Confederacy did not end war forever. They still fought their enemies. But it ended war between the five nations. It created a framework for resolving disputes without bloodshed. It created a system of checks and balances. It created a role for women in government. These are not abstract ideas. They are practical tools for living together. Hiawatha understood that peace requires structure. Structure requires law. Law requires consent. Consent requires persuasion. He mastered all of them. Fourth, that a good leader speaks, but a great leader listens. Hiawatha was an orator, but he was also a listener. He listened to the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga. He listened to their fears, their grievances, their hopes. He did not impose a solution from above. He built a solution from the ground up. That is why it lasted. Fifth, that the best legacy is not what you build, but what you make possible for others. Hiawatha did not become a king. He did not become a dictator. He became one chief among 50. He stepped back. He let the great law govern. He trusted the people. That trust was repaid. The Iroquois Confederacy outlived him by centuries. His legacy is not his name. It is the peace that his people still enjoy among themselves. Today, you can visit the Iroquois longhouses in New York and Ontario. You can attend a council meeting and hear the great law recited in the Mohawk or Seneca language. You can visit the Tree of Peace, a white pine that symbolizes the Confederacy. The Tree of Peace has 4 roots, spreading north, south, east, and west. Anyone who wishes to live in peace can follow the roots to the tree and shelter under its branches. That is the vision of the peacemaker. That is the dream of Hiawatha, a world where war is not inevitable. A world where enemies can become brothers. A world where a grieving father can forgive the man who killed his daughters and build a future together. That world is not perfect. The Iroquois Confederacy has had its share of conflicts, its internal disputes, its struggles with colonialism. But the great law remains. The Grand Council still meets. The clan mothers still choose the sachems. The Tree of Peace still stands, not as a physical tree, but as an idea. And ideas, as Hiawatha knew, are harder to kill than any army. Hiawatha, the name means, he who makes rivers. He made rivers of peace flow through a land of blood. He made a confederacy out of chaos. He made a family out of enemies, and he did it not with weapons, but with words. Not with force, but with forgiveness. Not with hate, but with love. That is the story of Hiawatha, the Iroquois leader who became a peacemaker, the founder of a confederacy that still lives, the man who turned grief into greatness. From where the sun now stands, his words still echo, his peace still holds, his tree still shelters those who seek it, and that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. Hiawatha, leader, orator, peacemaker. The founder of a confederacy, the man who made war obsolete among his people, and the legend that will never stop speaking.